And what is up? Welcome, DynastyLeagueFootball.com. There is no offseason, and why would there be? We've got so much work to do. We just had a draft, and we are going to go through and break down every single drafted player that's relevant that for every division, for every team, and talk about what it means to the team. And to do that, obviously, I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Tyler Karp. Tyler, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm very excited for this. We're going to break down all the relevant players and also probably some of the not relevant players. So it's going to be a fun time.
And we'll jump right into that with some of the maybe not relevant players, because the first on our list, where we're going through the AFC East, which is where we find ourselves today, they only took a wide receiver in the 6th round, and his name is Marquez Stevenson. And that, I don't expect that to have a lot of fantasy relevance in and of itself. What did jump out to me, though, is that the Bills did not draft a running back, despite there being some rumors that they were interested in some. And there were some interesting comments from their GM that said that they were looking for a home run hitter as far as a running back. So they didn't get that. There's not anybody available in free agency. So what does that mean that they didn't address the position in the running back in the draft ultimately? Does that give you more confidence in any of the running backs in Buffalo?
Well, before we get to the running backs, let's just give Marquez Stevenson his fair due. Okay. He plays for Josh Allen. So that means that we have some interest in him. Keep him in the back of a mind. Deep league. He was a 6th round pick. He's buried on the team. Diggs, is there. They have Beasley to play the slot, Davis on the outside. He's not going to get a lot of playing time, but he's someone deep league, worth the roster spot. He plays with Josh Allen. He could have a shot. So just wanted to give him his fair due there before we moved on. But moving on to the running backs, like you said, it means that we have the messy committee of Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, and now Matt Breida there. But none of it really matters, of course, because Josh Allen is the goal line back there. We don't want any of these players, right? Do you want these players? Do you want? How comfortable would you feel with the idea that you had to start one of these players on your fantasy team?
It's not somebody I'm going to be interested in starting, obviously, but I guess if I'm going to put my faith in anybody here, it's going to be Zach Moss, and mainly because I feel like the team looked a little bit different in the playoffs when he was hurt. And so from an NFL perspective, I think they do value him to some degree, but I don't think it's ever going to be the type of situation that's going to produce the kind of fantasy results that we want. Running back position can be a little bit bare. So if it's he's my 4th guy, 5th guy, and if I have to rely on him, I can, and he gets hot and I can trade him, great. But like you said, I'm not out searching for and looking for anybody here because Josh Allen is going to be involved in the rushing numbers overall.
Yeah, I would just sell Zach Moss to anyone who thinks he's going to be relevant. I don't think so. Devin Singletary, same thing. If anyone somehow thinks he'll still be relevant, you can just get rid of him. Matt Breida is not on most people's radars, but I suppose he should be on a roster at this point because he's a running back who's had success at other times in his NFL career. So yeah, I wish they had gotten one running back to just consolidate this mess, because with Josh Allen there, it doesn't work if there's multiple running backs. It needs to be one. And honestly, even when it was just one and it was Devin Singletary, it still wasn't very good. So maybe if it's one and it's Zach Moss, there's some hope. But I don't think that Devin Singletary and Matt Breida are just going to the bench completely. So I want no part of this backfield at all. And I think that fantasy managers should just stop trying to chase it personally.
I think you're right. The last thing I'll mention, they also didn't address the tight end position, which could be interesting with Josh Allen. But there are some rumors that potentially link them to Zach Ertz having some interest if he gets cut from Philadelphia. If that were to happen, would you have interest in Zach Ertz?
Yes, I would. I would have interest in Zach Ertz, actually. I would be very interested in having Zach Ertz in this Josh Allen offense. I think that Zach Ertz, he's not the Zach Ertz that he once was, but, could he be a low-end tight end 1 in this offense? Sure. How valuable is that, though? I don't know. In a tight end premium league, I'd be more interested. Now might be the time to buy Zach Ertz while he's still on Philadelphia and no one's thinking about him. Not really interested in Dawson Knox. He's just a stash. Even if Zach Ertz doesn't come there, I just don't think that Knox is ever going to really provide anything fantasy relevant. He just doesn't strike me as having any sort of upside really at all. More of an NFL player than a fantasy player that I think we're ever going to care about.
It's an offense that didn't have a whole lot of holes, so obviously they didn't spend a lot of time addressing that position. But now we can take our talents to South Beach in Miami, where they did address the offensive side of the ball and use some draft capital. The number 6 overall pick, and a little bit of a surprise, they took Jalen Waddle. And it's a wide receiver core that also added Will Fuller. They have Parker there already, Preston Williams, and of course Mike Gesicki. That is an interesting fit when you think about Tua and Waddle. That's been talked about a lot, but I know how you feel about this. Tell me about what do you think Jalen Waddle is going to mean to this offense, and what can we think about him for fantasy?
Well, I mean, I don't want multiple weapons in a Tua-led offense. That's a no for me. I don't think Tua is very good. I think I've seen enough of Tua. I think he's going to be fine at best. I think fine to good is his ceiling. Great, forget it. There's not going to be great, I don't think, from Tua. So I don't want multiple wide receiving weapons in this offense. If I had to choose one, it would be Waddle, because he's the youngest. I think he's the best of these players. He was picked 6th overall. We got to consider that. The NFL team thought that they should spend the 6th, and the Dolphins too, who have built their team the right way. They've done all the personnel moves that we wanted. Chris Greer is doing a great job there. He's been doing a great job for the last 2 years, rebuilding their dumpster fire. And I have to give, if they thought that Jalen Waddle was a good investment, I have to give them a little bit of credence for that. So I'll rate him as my number 1 receiver on that team, but I'm not expecting too much in year 1. Will Fuller, I don't know. He's suspended for the first game. It was only a 1-year deal. I'm a little bit low on Will Fuller, but he'll probably be the top receiver in 2021, even if Waddle is the dynasty one there who you want long term. Devontae Parker, I have no interest in. They're not supporting another receiver there. Zero interest in Parker in dynasty or redraft. He's off my radar. Gesicki, we're going to talk about something with Gesicki. We can talk about that now. We can bring in Hunter Long. Mm-hmm. So, if you want, Hunter Long was drafted in the 3rd round to kind of add to the offense. We know that Mike Gesicki is a free agent after 2021. So I don't know. That doesn't say good things about Gesicki, that they spent a day 2 pick on another tight end. That's a little bit concerning. So yeah, it's kind of, I want Waddle, but I don't really want any of these other pieces at all. Preston Williams, you mentioned earlier. Preston Williams is off the radar completely. His opportunity has passed.
100% with you there. I guess the interesting guy for me, if you're going to think about stashing, would be Lynn Bowden. I'd love to see something materialize from him and him get higher snaps. I don't expect him to necessarily become anything, but an interesting stash if you're in a deeper league. And, I think Jalen Waddle, the interesting thing about it to me is that there are a lot of people who think that if Jalen Waddle would have stayed healthy, you're not looking at Devontae Smith being the Heisman Trophy winner, things like that. He's got enough talent on his own. Devontae Smith got all of the publicity, but then you saw it in the draft. Teams believed in Jalen Waddle, and a lot of the comments from Chris Greer, the GM, they were in love with him from the start. And it's an interesting team, and I'll bring something up just thinking about Narrative Street. The Miami Dolphins have a little bit of a leadership vacuum internally. They lost all 3 of their captains from last year. Fitzpatrick, Bobby McCain, Kyle Van Noy, they're all gone. And we get to see, they're kind of handing the reins over, Tua, this is your team. They say he's healthy. It takes a little bit of faith, but I do think I'm going to believe a little bit more in Tua, and they've got some more weapons around him now. And, he's not going to have any excuses. He's got to go out and perform now. But I think there could be some good things happening in Miami.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance you could be seeing a new quarterback there in the near future. I have no faith in Tua at all. No faith. I've kind of seen enough. I do think that Waddle is very talented and will succeed anyway, but I don't know. These other pieces, they signed Devontae Parker to a long-term extension, and then they signed Will Fuller in free agency when Preston Williams was also on the roster. They have Mike Gesicki in the second round, then draft another tight end in the third round. Shows what they think of their pick of Mike Gesicki. Probably not so great. So it just kind of seems like they're committed to Jalen Waddle, and everyone else is kind of take it or leave it. And that's kind of how I feel about everyone else. Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it could also be the way that it sounds like the GM spoke about their running back position as well with Myles Gaskins, because they were connected to every major running back in this draft. It didn't work out where they could draft any of them. But based on the comments of Chris Grier, I just don't think they have a lot of faith in Myles Gaskin. And a guy that's getting some dynasty love right now, they picked up in the 7th round, running back out of Cincinnati, Jared Dokes. Do you have any faith that he could maybe carve out a role for himself in a bit of a crowded backfield?
No, I have no faith that he will carve out a role in the backfield. I don't know. Maybe, but he's a 7th round pick. Yes, Myles Gaskin was also a 7th round pick, but we've seen him perform on an NFL field. We don't know anything about Jared Dokes. I mean, he's fine, I guess. I don't know. Given that his competition for touches behind Gaskin is Salvon Ahmed and Malcolm Brown, it's possible that he could carve out somewhat of a role, but I think they're eventually going to get another running back in here. Maybe not this year. I'm surprised. I think they probably did put in a waiver claim on Kerryon Johnson. But the Eagles had a worse record, so I believe they would have been ahead in the waiver order. I would not be surprised if they put a waiver claim in on Kerryon Johnson. I think they need another running back here. I floated this once, and I hate to say it, but I think this is somewhere where Todd Gurley could sign. One of the only places where Todd Gurley is probably the second best running back on that team if he signs there. Most other places, I don't even think he's the second best. But here, I think that Todd Gurley has more left in the tank than Salvon Ahmed has ever had, or anything Malcolm Brown. We know what those two did on the same team. Anything Malcolm Brown has ever accomplished in his life. So I do think there's a chance that could happen, and then people will panic on Gaskin. And that would eliminate any hope of Dokes breaking out at this point. Because we know that Ahmed was actually okay when he got playing time, and Malcolm Brown is competent. So if they sign someone like Gurley, Dokes wouldn't even make the team.
It's not often that you can say the Patriots were quiet, and that is definitely not the case in this draft. They went up and they didn't have to move. They got Mac Jones, who was rumored to be the 3rd overall pick, like a lot of interest, and people thought it was crazy. But also him falling to 15 seemed crazy too, and he kind of falls in their lap. Now, I'm really excited to see what he can do in this offense, because I think there's a lot of things about the way that he's built that, like, you can look at the way they had the offense. He's not Tom Brady, but you can look at the way they ran the offense with Tom Brady and say, like, okay, he's the pocket, the guy that's, they talk about him being athletic in the pocket and being able to move up, things like that. But he's not going to be what they ran last year with Cam Newton. And they've got Cam Newton on the roster. They obviously drafted Mac Jones. Mac Jones is the future. I don't know how you build an offense that supports both.
You don't.
So I don't know that Cam Newton makes this team. What do you think about Mac Jones on the Patriots?
Cam Newton's going to make the team. I mean, he's going to make the team and start week 1. That's what's going to happen. But, I mean, you were generous. You called what the Patriots did in 2020 an offense. There was no offense in 2020. The Patriots had no offense. It was an unwatchable piece of hot garbage. That's what it was. It was awful. It was one of the worst alleged offenses. I would call it an offense. That's what I would call it, is what they did in 2020. So if that's the Cam Newton that we're going to see, and might I remind people, that's the same Cam Newton that we saw for 2 games in 2019 when he was hurt, and the same Cam Newton we saw for 6 games down the stretch in 2018 after he hurt his shoulder. So why would it be any different? He had 1 good game. in 2020. One good game, 10 interceptions, 8 touchdowns passing. I mean, you're talking about putrid is what you're talking about. He delivered 2,657 yards in 15 starts. Unacceptable. I don't care how much of it is running. That kind of yardage total is unacceptable for a starting quarterback these days. No more excuses about the weapons. There's a lot of excuses, but there are many other quarterbacks with less who delivered more passing yards, more than 8 touchdowns. Like, no excuses for that. So I think that Cam Newton is going to start week 1, but I anticipate this team to, they've spent a lot of money on free agency. I don't think they have a lot to show for that money. So they wasted a lot of it on Nelson Aguilar. What a great signing that was. And then they overpaid for the combination of Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, 2 tight ends that I like, but they're just okay. I mean, they're just okay, those 2. Not difference makers at $12.5 million a year. So people say that they're going to be better. I don't know about that. They don't have any receivers. So when they're 0-4 or 0-5, I think we just see the end of Cam Newton's career. And then we move to Mac Jones, who's also going to lose a bunch of games. Because this team is not ready for a rookie quarterback. They don't have a star running back. They have no wide receivers. They have 2 tight ends, but what about wide receivers? They don't have any wide receivers. You need wide receivers. Some people say, they signed 2 tight ends. That doesn't cut it. You need wide receivers. They don't have any wide receivers. So I don't know what they're doing. They also don't really have a good running game. I'm sorry. The combination of Damian Harris, the 4th-round pick this year, Ramondre Stevenson, the ghost of Sony Michel, an old and busted James White, and whoever else they have on the team, that is not a good running game. That is uninspiring, unexciting. So what am I excited about here? I mean, this whole team is a disaster. I still don't understand what they're doing with N'Keal Harry. Is he just done? Is he a bust? Probably.
Yes.
I guess so, but why haven't they traded him if they hate him that much? I mean, they couldn't have gotten anything back for him during the draft. I thought he would be on another team. I don't know. I like Mac Jones long term just because I think eventually they'll put pieces around him. But I don't know. This team is just not one I want to invest in fantasy in 2021 at all. I'd like to stay away. And yeah, that's kind of my take on all of these people for the short term at least.
You mentioned Ramondre Stevenson, who they added in the 4th round, and there's actually a little bit of buzz coming out of the Patriots beat writers and all that he could, if he can earn a spot on special teams, he could push Sony Michel off the roster altogether.
Oh,
now
great.
I thought Damian Harris was actually I thought he looked pretty good in the opportunities that he had. The offense had nothing else, and I kind of liked what I saw out of Damian Harris. Just from a visual, what he looked like. The numbers were whatever, but
5 yards a carry, that was something.
Yeah, if he could earn some time, I think that would be interesting. Now we know how the Patriots treat the running backs, and I don't expect Stevenson to see a whole lot of time on the field. But not a bad dynasty stash though. I think
I don't want him though. He doesn't catch any passes. Damian Harris was a good to satisfactory receiver in college. He delivered 5 receptions. 5 in 2020. I don't want 5 receptions. I'm sorry. We play a PPR game. Ramondre Stevenson? Is Ramondre Stevenson a pass catcher? I don't think so. I think that he's more of a bigger back. I mean, did he demonstrate much? I mean, his last year in college, he had 18 catches for 211 yards. That's fine. I mean, that's pretty good in 6 games. It's not bad, but that's not how he profiles in the NFL. He's a huge back. He's 6 feet, 231 pounds or whatever. I was hearing people saying, his ceiling is the LeGarrette Blount. LeGarrette Blount was good. The one year he scored 18 touchdowns. This offense isn't scoring 18 rushing touchdowns. You think you're going to get 18 rushing touchdowns from this dumpster fire? No, thank you. I want no part of any of these players. Ramondre Stevenson, I'll let someone else draft him. There are other players I might be more interested in, although honestly, not really, because the rookie draft range and rookie draft in that range is just puke worthy across the board. So I guess I would draft him if it came up, but I really I don't want to draft someone who could get 4 carries in year 1. And then what do I have? I didn't see anything. He sat on the bench because Bill Belichick doesn't like rookies. And then poof, he's outside the top 200 in Dynasty rankings, and I have nothing to show for it. Like, I don't want that. I'd rather draft someone who can see the field.
You mentioned the lack of weapons. So 7th round, they take Trey Nixon out of Central Florida. Any hope for Trey Nixon?
Hope? No, there's no hope. Yeah. I don't want the 1st round receiver they took 2 years ago. I don't want the Nelson Aguilar that they signed in free agency to a massively overbloated contract. So no, I don't want Trey Nixon, 7th round wide receiver. I don't want that at all. When has Bill Belichick demonstrated any ability to develop any wide receivers? He couldn't develop the one he took in the 1st round, let alone the one he took in the 7th round. So no, I have no interest in Trey Nixon at all. Not a sleeper. I like it all. Marquez Stevenson, who we talked about earlier on the show, is much more of a sleeper. He's a sleeper I'd consider. But Trey Nixon, I wouldn't even draft him. I can't imagine a format where he'd even be selected.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think the team I'm most excited to talk about from this division is the New York Jets. Because you have
100%.
a completely remade roster here. And am I crazy for liking what they're building here in New York?
No, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be crazy. They had a good draft. You should not be crazy.
The 3 guys that they took that are fantasy relevant: Zach Wilson, quarterback out of BYU. Obviously, they took him at number 2. The wide receiver Elijah Moore, really exciting, out of Ole Miss, and then running back out of North Carolina, Michael Carter. What do you think about the makeup of this team, and what are your expectations for these rookies?
I mean, I like what they did. They also, they overpaid, I think, a little bit, but they also, let's not forget that they traded up for Elijah Vera Tucker in the 1st round, giving them another offensive lineman to protect their rookie quarterback, which I like. I like when teams invest in the offensive line, unlike what the Bengals did, to protect their rookie quarterback. So I like that they did that. The Jets are actually making competent moves. Now, as for Zach Wilson, some people say, Zach Wilson sucks. Really? I mean, do you know? How good are we at predicting what quarterbacks are going to be good? We're so great at that, right? I mean, we were so great at that in 2018 when everyone was like, oh yeah, Josh Allen, no, we don't want him. He was taken 7th overall. No. We don't want him on our team. We'll take someone else. We don't want him. How did that go? Then 2019, Daniel Jones, nah, we don't want him. We'll take, whatever running back and, in that 2019 class, how did that go? Poorly. Then 2020, Justin Herbert. Nah, we don't really like what he did in college. He's just not a good prospect. We don't like him. And were we right about that? No. So is Zach Wilson an inferior prospect in my opinion to Justin Fields? Yes. Do I think the Jets should have taken Justin Fields? 100% yes.
Yes.
Does that mean that Zach Wilson is bad? No. He could be good too. There's no way to know. So I don't really see it in his college profile. He did have a good final season. I wrote an article on Zach Wilson where I was kind of meh on him at best. So I saw some things I liked and some things I disliked, but I think he's an upgrade over Sam Darnold. If you told me who could you have today, 3 years of failure, 3 years of Sam Darnold's failure. I don't want failure. So I'll take the unknown in Zach Wilson and take my chances over anything that Sam Darnold was going to deliver. So
it sounded like they got really enamored with the fact that he ran a very similar offense to the now offensive coordinator's Mike LaFleur's offense when he was in college. Sounds like they got really enamored with the fact that he did something very similar. They like the off-balance throws, lots of comments about that when I was looking at info on the division. And they mentioned a bunch of times, though, something that is interesting for fantasy, that they expect a vertical passing game out of Mike LaFleur and this Jets. Now, that
vertical,
it doesn't matter if he's a good NFL quarterback necessarily for fantasy, but if they're going to be pushing the ball down the field and they've got now some weapons that can accomplish that.
Howard, tell me how they're going to push the ball down the field.
Well, Elijah Moore is very good. They have Denzel Mims from last year. He's good. They still have Jamison Crowder, and they've got Corey Davis, who they signed in the offseason.
Yeah, but these are not push the ball down the field. I mean, especially Corey Davis. These are not really push the ball down the field type of guys.
Moore can do that, and Mims can do that.
He can, but that's not how I want to see Moore used. I want to see Moore used. This is the mistake we always make. I mean, we cast these, guys who have speed into these downfield roles when we should be getting them the ball in space. I don't want to see Moore relegated to a deep threat role. I don't want that. I want him to get a bunch of receptions over the middle and then use his after the catch abilities to add to the offense. I want him to rack up those, because we play a PPR game. Every catch, it's a point. I don't want him to be I don't want a bunch of deep plays. That doesn't sound good to me. What I'd love to hear is we're going to focus on completing quick passes and just moving the ball quickly. That's what I want to hear, because that would get more plays out of the offense, would get us more receptions for PPR, because we have a problem here. We have a problem with these 4 receivers now. Is that because they say they're not going to cut Jamison Crowder. Now, they could just be posturing in order to, work a trade, which I think is still possible. But they say they're not going to cut him, which means we kind of have a little bit of a log jam here between Moore, Davis, Mims, and Crowder, which is kind of it's the kind of thing where I think for fantasy, at least for 2021 redraft, I won't be drafting any of these guys. I'll just be ignoring them all. In terms of Dynasty, I don't know. I'm not a fan of Denzel Mims. Everyone knows it. I think at this point that I really just dislike him. I've never liked him. I didn't get it last year. I don't get it now. I think personally that Corey Davis is Denzel Mims' ceiling. If Denzel Mims succeeds, he would be Corey Davis. And Corey Davis, who I wrote an article on recently, has improved his efficiency numbers significantly every year he's been in the NFL. He deserved the contract that he got. He is a very underrated NFL receiver he's not an NFL 1, but he's better than a 2. So I think that he's going to lead the team in numbers, and he'll be the most valuable PPR receiver this season. I do think Moore has a chance to pass Mims for the second valuable. A lot of that depends on how quickly they phase out Jamison Crowder, who I don't want at all. I'd like Jamison Crowder if he signed with another team, but I don't want him on this team. There's just no room for that on this team.
Now, from a redraft perspective, since you brought that up, I'm curious about Michael Carter, and two real quick stories on Michael Carter. So this was really interesting as I was researching this team. One, in pure Jets fashion, when they took Michael Carter in the 4th round, the running back, ESPN aired footage of the wrong Michael Carter.
I love it.
And it caused Robert Sela, the head coach, to go back and make sure they turned in the right name and the right player. And because he questioned himself for a second, like, wait a minute, did I turn in the wrong name? I love that little story. But then they actually did draft the other Michael Carter in the next round.
I know. I love it. I didn't hear that story until now, but that is a great story.
Yeah.
We need to talk about Michael Carter because it is an important discussion. One
last thing, and then I'm going to let you go. There was actually, before the draft, there was a lot of comments from them about Michael Carter. And we hear a lot about teams, not showing their hand and things like that. There were a lot of glowing things that they said about Michael Carter even before the draft. So that tells you that this isn't some he just happened to be there, so we took him. They actually like Michael Carter, and there's certainly opportunity at the top of the depth chart.
mean, I think of all the players in this division, Michael Carter is the one that it has the most debate. I mean, it's not really that much debate about Elijah Moore. Most people have him in the same place. Jalen Waddle, kind of same thing. Most people are in on him. You know, it's flip-flop with Devonta Smith for the wide receiver 2 in this class. But there's not a lot of, and the other people are mostly not relevant. So Michael Carter is the big one. It's kind of, he's day 3. We know day 3 running back. We do this every year. Day 3 running back has opportunity. They don't hit. Last year, Joshua Kelly, round 4. Didn't do anything. Year before, Justice Hill. Didn't do anything. And what do we have in round 4? I mean, people say, oh, round 4 is great draft capital. It's great. We really like round 4. That's great. Is it? How many round 4 running backs have actually done anything in the last, 6 years? There's 1. 7 years, actually. Devonta Freeman is the only one. Everyone else, you have Devontae Booker, Savaje P-Ride, the aforementioned Justice Hill, and Joshua Kelly. That's your round 4. We don't want these guys. So round 4 is closer to round 7 than it is to round 3. So with that said, I'm in on Michael Carter because the other options on the depth chart are Michael Pirine, who was also round 4 and didn't take his opportunity as a rookie, and Tevin Coleman, who is the only running back who managed to fail in Kyle Shanahan's San Francisco offense. Everyone else, every other running back succeeded. Literally every other one, and he failed. He was the one failure. So as we talked about earlier, I don't like failure. So he's a failure. I don't want any part of him. So I guess there's an opportunity for Michael Carter on the depth chart, but I would not overspend on him. I would take Elijah Moore ahead of him in rookie drafts. I take Rondo Moore ahead of him in rookie drafts. Trey Sermon ahead of him in rookie drafts, even if the opportunity is not there. Even Rashad Bateman, who we know I do not like Rashad Bateman. I would take Rashad Bateman ahead of Michael Carter in rookie drafts because I'm just not overdrafting a round 4 running back. I don't care how good the opportunity is. I just can't do it. I get it. I'll never get him with although actually I kind of have been a little bit not that out on him. I mean, I have him as my 14th ranked rookie. So it is in 1 QB. So it is possible at that price that I do get him. But yeah, it's tough. It just it feels wrong. I mean, when I rank redraft, I'm going to have to rank him as an RB3, but I realize that I could get absolutely nothing from him. And that's well within the range of outcomes that he delivers nothing.
I think it could be an interesting target in the second round of your rookie drafts, and as a lottery ticket type player. And I think that pretty much does it for the division right there. That's a good recap of exactly what these teams did in the draft and how we think it affects the team and the other veterans on the roster. If you have any disagreements, comments, agreements, whatever you have to say, leave it down there in the comment section or just DM Tyler. That's probably a great place to, especially if it's that.
Please don't do that.
Criticisms. Please
no,
yeah.
Please don't do that.
Just kidding. Put it in the comments and like this video. If you're not subscribed already, subscribe to DLF. Great content. As always, we got 8 of these coming. This was number 1. Excited to do this. And if you're not subscribed to dynastyleaguefootball.com, make sure you're doing that. It's a great website. It's a perfect place to get an edge on your league mates, especially Tyler's favorite place at DLF is what?
Oh, it's the Ask DLF forum. Nobody ever uses it. If you like making comments on this video, if you want to ask all of us, you can. There's an if you subscribe to DLF, you can ask all the DLF team and analysts, and we'll answer your questions. So that is my favorite. And of course, my articles. I like those too. Read those. That would make me very happy if people did that as well.
For Tyler, for me, for DLF, follow us all. You see our ats right there on the screen. Do that. We'll see you on the next video.